Welcome to the Recruiting Roundtable, where we talk to HR and talent acquisition leaders about thoughtful topics in the world of recruiting. For today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the state of recruiting in 2023. I would say a lot has changed since 2022, and I think my two guests can probably attest to that. It's been a very interesting year as it relates to talent acquisition. I am super excited to be joined by Joe Doyle, Director, Talent Acquisition from Harness, and Manuela, Business Operations and Talent Acquisition at Nanoleaf. Joe, Manuela, thank you so much for joining and spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sean.
Of course. And so before we get started, let's each do a quick, brief introduction, who you are, your role, and just briefly about your company, please. Maybe Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, happy to. My name is Joe Doyle. I lead talent acquisition on the R&D, G&A, and marketing side of the house for Harness. Harness is a company that builds tools in the space of software delivery. So we're building developer tools specifically in the software delivery space.
Great, thank you. And Manuela?
My name is Manuela. I do business operations and talent acquisition here at Nanoleaf. I do all of the hiring for our headquarters here in Toronto, and then I also do some hiring for our team in China and in the Philippines as well. We do smart lighting products, so we do smart light bulbs, smart light panels, and we have a pretty big R&D team. Most of our company is R&D, so we have a ton of developers that we are constantly hiring for, and we mostly focus on like software developers, embedded developers, mobile teams, all that good stuff.
That's awesome. I need to get in touch with you. I think I need some lights from the back of my wall here. Probably make it look a little bit more interesting.
Definitely.
And lastly, so my name is Sean. I actually know Manuel and Joe from some previous business arrangements. We've done some recruiting for both of them. I'm the CEO of a new recruiting company called Alchemist. And shortly about us, we're on a mission to help companies hire 50% faster and reduce agency spend by 80% by offering unlimited hires for a flat monthly fee. So that's me. All right, so let's get right into it. Compared to 2022, and maybe even 2021, because I feel like 21 and 22 blended a little bit. How is hiring? What's hiring like at your company for the past year? Maybe we'll start with Manuela.
Definitely has changed a lot. I think last year we were still very much scaling from the growth that we saw in 2020. And then towards this year, we started scaling back a bit, and we did see like all of our recruitment pause for a few months as well. We have kind of picked up again, just as we continue to grow as a company, but it definitely was a big change from last year. We did not have as much hiring this year. This entire summer, we didn't really hire. It wasn't until about September that we started hiring again.
Okay, interesting. And Joe, how about things at Harness?
Yeah, similar to what Manuela had stated, I find that we talk about scaling a lot, but we don't often talk about getting small, and that's that's kind of what the motion has been like here at Harness. My team has scaled down. Everybody takes on more responsibility, and there's a little less velocity in the process when you look at it, but there's also no like. Not a robust plan either. It's a little more of a reactive recruiting motion where we kind of always have to be on and aware for the need of the hour. So, yeah.
And so you mentioned things change like in terms of your role. How would you say they were different? Let's say when you're doing more high volume hiring, and maybe like 2021, where you're kind of hiring engineers, like any engineer you can find, you're going to hire them, versus now where you're a little bit more reactive. How does that change your role on the day to day?
You have to position yourself differently. It's in a sense it's almost a more competitive market because you'll find candidates are very cautious about making a move, and you'll also find that at least in my world, the candidates that do get selected at the end of the process are just as competitive as they've ever been, with an added layer of being conservative about making a job change, right? So with those two things, I mean, I find it not to be it's not easy to hire in this market when you have to hit the mark, hit the bar, and also land people.
Mm-hmm. And Manuela, have you found similar experience in terms of candidates and their, I guess, apprehension or just being a little more cautious in changing jobs in terms of their taking on the next role?
I would say in the beginning of the year, that was definitely the case. When we were hiring in September, I definitely saw a huge shift.
Mm-hmm.
I think before it would take for a developer role maybe a few months to fill that, just because we were very specific and we're looking for people with hardware and software, so it can be very specific for us. But we actually found that a lot of people were looking for companies with really good reviews, like for work culture and just for really good experience. So we actually found it a lot easier to recruit this time around than I did even all of last year. Um,
Mm.
so I don't know if maybe people are looking for companies that have really good ratings on Glassdoor or just overall have a good word of mouth for having a good work culture. Um, so we definitely have seen a shift in the last few months, specifically the last 2 months, I would say,
Mhm.
with candidates really reaching out to us, being like, I want to work for Nanoleaf, I want to work for this type of company.
And do you think so obviously Nanoleaf has a great reputation in terms of, like, company culture. I mean, I've worked with Nanoleaf for a while, and so I have a pretty good personal understanding of, like, the culture and the types of people you bring in. But do you think it also has to do with there's a lot more just people available? Like, do you think that has something to do with it at all? Or do you think it's really the, kind of the Glassdoor and the company culture and those types of things that are driving people towards you?
I think a lot of people are traumatized from layoffs, um,
Okay.
in the tech space, because even
Yeah.
some people that we've hired have been through layoffs in the past, and they say they're so terrified of it. They
Mhm.
don't want to go through it again. So I think they're looking for companies that just feel a little bit more personal, versus working for the big tech giants that are okay with laying off thousands of people at a time. I think they'd
Uh-huh.
rather work for kind of like smaller knit companies where if you do your work, you'll be recognized, and you'll see like the teams stay a little bit like closer knit, and it's a little bit more work because it's a startup,
Uh-huh.
but at least you're valued, right? So
Yeah.
I think that would probably be a big difference. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And maybe I'll kick it back to Joe. So Joe, in terms of different areas, whether it's sales or product or engineering, where have you seen the biggest changes in terms of how candidates are engaging with Harness and, maybe volume of candidates or just your strategy in general in terms of those different areas? Where have you seen the biggest changes?
Um, that's a good question. Full disclosure, I don't have incredible exposure to the sales side here. So
Mhm.
most of my background is almost everything else. I've experienced as being a startup, right? What's really changed is our equity story, and we've had to get really sharp around pitching the vision and the longer term goals of the company.
Mhm.
I just think in an environment where things are always up and to the right financially,
Mhm.
it's easier to see value in equity, right? Startup equity that might be paper money today. And
Yeah.
that's it's a really, really big cornerstone of our compensation package. It's part of the value that we provide to employees. So
Mhm.
just getting tight on that story and really kind of zooming out into the bigger picture and like telling people about the journey that a startup like Harness or many out there would be is of utmost importance. And you have to select the right people to input into the process, because in a competitive market like we hire in the Bay Area and Bangalore, these are all very competitive markets. You will have candidates that will engage with you and play the game to the right extent, and then you know kind of leave you at the altar when you walk
Mhm.
down the aisle.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to still have to look out for things like that. Similar, it's not dissimilar to a competitive market where people will get better and better offers. It's just the reasons why these people might fall out of your process are slightly different.
Right. And so you mentioned equity. This is a question I get asked quite a bit, mostly from hiring companies like startups in Silicon Valley or in New York. Do you find that candidates in different markets value equity differently? For example, a candidate in Silicon Valley versus one in Toronto versus one in Bangalore.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it is like the proximity principle. Some of these folks would have had their innings with companies and had equity, either a good story or a bad story, and they will, live their life with that imprinted on them. Or they may have friends that are telling them things about equity, either good or bad. So you find that in markets where startups have been around for a few generations, let's call them, you have candidates who are more educated and knowledgeable about equity. They know the right questions to ask, and they will explore that deeply. Where in other markets, like whether it's different European markets, it has a different treatment because of maybe not due to lack of education, but due to the taxation of compensation vehicles like that in that region. It just might not be as powerful as a tool for companies like ours in those areas. And that's something we take into account when we're crafting our compensation packages and balancing between the different components of them. But yeah, you're right. Different markets do react differently to specifically that equity component of the package.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself for sure. Manuela, what are your thoughts on this when you're speaking to a candidate and you're presenting an offer? What are some of the things you think candidates care about the most? And Nanoleaf is still hiring primarily in Canada, right?
Yeah, so we only hire in Canada for North America.
Mm-hmm.
I would say our candidates, they tend to ask more for wellness. So things like, for example, like we have a wellness program, so they ask a lot about that. They ask a lot about our vacation, kind of like more of like the benefits side of things, more than they ask for actual equity in the company. We do have stock options here, but it kind of depends on like the role and then the department head on how many you're going to get. So usually I'll refer the candidate to the department head. But we definitely get a lot of questions about kind of like our day to day and the benefits and how we ensure that employees stay happy.
I think that's consistent with my experience too. And I don't know if we had this conversation, Joe, in the past, but I feel like Canadian candidates are are more interested in the like cash compensation and benefits and wellness than equity. I won't say a blanket statement, but I think generally speaking, that's what we've seen. Whereas in candidates are in Silicon Valley, I think are more interested in the equity piece. Have you experienced that, Joe? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, I think it really depends on the candidate themselves. But yeah, no, in like a general sense, I would certainly agree with that for sure. In Silicon Valley, it doesn't happen all the time, but you will have people, somewhat regularly that are optimizing for equity and willing to walk away from cash if it's the right company, right? And if they are really buying into the story. From time to time, we'll see that, but usually what those people would have experienced earlier in their career is a successful exit where they can look back on that 4-year period of time and, understand that they made a lot more than just their compensation. So it does happen, but it's pretty rare, and this kind of market kind of dampens that story a bit for us, I would say. And we see even those people who are really interested in equity naturally start to care about the cash a little bit more.
Well, I think one of the unsaid things is people don't think that their options are going to vest. They're, if you have a 3-year vesting period, people are nervous that after a year and a half, they may be not even there anymore, right? So that's something that you have to kind of think about. Let's talk a little bit about RTO, return to office. Maybe Manuela, can you share? Is there an RTO plan? Do you have like a hybrid model? Do you accept people in the office? Is it fully remote? And can you tell us how candidates have been, responding to whatever the policy is that you have?
Yeah, we have a pretty flexible hybrid policy in place. So our R&D team comes in twice a week, and then our marketing team once a week. The reason we have our marketing team in a little bit less is because they can do most of their work on just their computer. For our R&D team, we do deal with both software and hardware. So there's no way that everybody could have all of the hardware at home. It will completely overtake their entire house, and you can ask any Nanoleaf employee. We have way too many Nanoleaf products at home
Yeah.
already. So most people will leave a lot of stuff here in the office. So it definitely works out to the benefit of a lot of our employees to be coming into the office. We also have a pretty good location in Toronto, so we're right in front of St. Lawrence Market. It's just kind of a nice office to be in. It's not a stuffy glass skyscraper. It's definitely a fun office to be in. So I think it's going well for us. It definitely is not the end of the world for everybody, and because we're flexible with people if they do need to stay home, I think it's been working out great for us.
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting because you have a hardware component to your business. It's a very tangible reason to be in the office, right? Because the hardware is there. Joe, what about Harness? What's the work from home versus in office policy?
Yeah, Harness recently announced a return to office policy where in which employees within 50 miles of an office or a hub would generally be required to come into that office 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I think you see, mixed reviews. I personally, I like going into the office.
Mm-hmm.
Just me personally, but obviously some people wouldn't, and it's quite a change that we had to go through the whole pandemic, right? Like what 4 years ago, everybody was going into an office 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Wasn't too much of an issue, but
Mm-hmm.
I understand like our lives have changed over that time, and coming back and coming into that change can be hard for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But we find people on both sides of the coin, and what we do from a recruiting perspective is no different than what we would always do for different engagements with people. Is we just try to find the people who are open to that kind of arrangement. um, I find myself looking for people who are already kind of in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and luckily our hubs are in areas that are pretty talent dense. Um, because the relocation conversation gets tough now. If we find a candidate that's outside of that zone and we want them to be in an office, that becomes a tougher conversation because this fiscal year there's not budget to relocate people. We're
Yeah.
kind of find ourselves in a situation asking those people to do it on their own, which is uncomfortable. All in all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, RTO is a big thing. And I think there's definitely pros and cons to it. I mean, I've been working remotely, running my own companies for the last, it's 4, I can't believe it. I think about it, it's been 4 years since I've been in an office regularly. But I think there's a lot of value to being together with people. I definitely feel, and a lot, like just outside just work and recruiting, I get a lot of feedback from people saying, they feel like the connectiveness to other people has changed since COVID, right?
Mhm.
People are more isolated. Social media has really driven that too, with people being on their phones a lot. And I think it's healthy to be in an office environment, to interact with your coworkers, to shake their hand, to go to lunch with them, right? Those are the little things that make teams closer. And I think it's an important piece to ensuring that you're building a great company culture. So I totally support return to office, and I think having like some flexibility in that is definitely helpful because people are used to being at home now, right? So I think if you say, hey, you got to be in the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week, every single person, I think there's going to be some pushback on that.
For sure. Me, just in another side note, like myself personally, I find that the days that I go into the office actually help my work-life balance because it puts like bookends on the day a little bit, and
Uh-huh.
I don't feel as guilty if I don't open up the computer late at night. So
What about you, Manuela? How do you feel about being in an office versus at home? It looks like you're in an office right now. If I'm
I am in the office today. I didn't have to be in, but I kind of wanted to get out of the house. I like our office. Honestly, it's a really, really cool office, and I like talking to my coworkers and just going on coffee breaks. I can corner them if I have questions, which I think is really nice.
uh-huh.
I think that's probably the best part of working in the office. They do it to me back, so it's fine. But definitely, I think it's a lot quicker to get work done when you're kind of already surrounded by your coworkers versus kind of chasing them around on Teams. So I definitely like coming into the office. We also have one of our developers that brings in his dog every day, so I like
There
to
you
see
go.
him as well.
The office pets, gotta love them. So let's switch gears a little bit into terms of job seekers. So when I go on LinkedIn every day, sometimes I got to turn it off because it can be a little bit discouraging to see people and kind of sad and to see people who have been looking for jobs for sometimes months on months. Like I've seen people say I've been looking for 9 months, 12 months. What are some advice you could give to job seekers who are trying to, potentially get an interview at your company? Maybe they're applying and they're not getting callbacks, or they are getting into interviews and not getting any far. Maybe Manuela, you can go first. What are some tips you would give to job seekers?
I would say really tailoring your resume to make sure that it is fitting into the job description. I think more often than not, a lot of people, especially for technical roles, they won't put in all the tools that they use. And if, for example, I have a QA role and I need them to use Python, they know how to use Python, but they didn't really add that, then I can't interview them. I won't have time. So definitely really tailoring your resume to make sure that everything that you know how to use is in there, being very open to writing a cover letter, even if it's something just short. I think that's always very much appreciated by a lot of recruiters. And just having something easy to read. A lot of resumes that I will get in will be very difficult to read. They'll have no dates. The companies won't be clear. Definitely just updating your resume is probably the best way to go. Even if you have a gap in your resume, I would never look over it.
Hmm.
Or I would never be like, oh, well, this person hasn't been working for months, not going to interview them. I think just having a strong resume that really shows that you're passionate about what you do, you like what you do, you know what you're doing, that will get you an interview with Nanoleaf.
So I want to ask you this question. You've both seen this resume where it's like just a block of text, and it's every single technical keyword, every programming language in the book. When you see something like that, Manolo, what do you think of that candidate when they just send the block of text with basically every keyword under the sun?
Um, I think if they have the skill set and there's at least some sort of, I guess, description of what they did at the company, I'm open to reading the block. If they have the skill set, I want to see them in an interview.
Okay, that's cool. Joe, what about you? You've seen the resume that I'm talking about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So me personally, what I do is I automatically I kind of just scroll down to the job section first,
Hmm.
and then I'm really looking for a narrative in someone's career, whether no matter what stage in their career they are, so that I can get behind that narrative. And then if I'm looking for supporting information about the technologies that they've used, then yeah, I will go back up and reference the block.
Hmm.
Um, the block to me kind of seems like it's there for the machines and the computers to read.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I interact with it, I kind of just skip by it. I think it's something that they probably need to have. I
Hmm.
can't really think of like a better way to weave everything that they've used into each job that they've used it. So I think it's maybe the necessary evil.
Yeah. It's true, right? Because there's a lot of, AI, machine learning, they're parsing the resumes and they're trying to get the keywords. And if you don't have them stuffed in there, to Manuela's point, maybe if you don't have Python written, she's not going to look at you. She's going to like, you got hundreds of resumes. She's going to flip right past you. Right. So let's talk about once the candidate gets into the interview. Joe, you got the candidate, they're doing a screening call with you. What are you really looking for? What are some of the things that make exceptional candidates stand out versus candidates that maybe don't pass your screening interview?
Engagement, just sort of measuring engagement with the company, and how interested, how attracted they are to the company.
Hmm.
If people know things about our founder, or they've spoken to people in the past and they can bring those things up from conferences or whatever, um, those are always good signals. We always usually prioritize those people higher than just your average job seeker who might be just looking for a job. So
Hmm.
you know, that's something that, like, advice that I would give to candidates is to you know, to try and fake that interest, even if it's not there genuinely when you're looking for a role. Like,
Hmm.
this will sound cliche, but you have to do research on the company. You have to put yourself in a position to at least seem like you're super interested in that company,
Hmm.
um, because it's like, you know, it's like dating.
Yeah.
You know, the people that are behind the recruiter at the company are going to respond to the disposition of the candidate as they're coming through the process, and make decisions based on that.
Hmm. And Manuela, what about you? If a candidate comes in and has no idea what Nanoleaf is and has never tried one of your products, does that matter to you, or does it?
I think just like Joe said, engagement is huge. So having somebody that is going to be very excited from the get is very important to us. Culture is super important to us because we're using such new technology for most of our teams. We're using Matter Thread. Most people don't have that on their resume. It would be
Hmm.
absolutely shocking if somebody was using those in like previous positions and had a good amount of experience in it, and it's going to be something they're going to have to learn on the job anyways. So we really, really focus on culture fit here. And if somebody comes in and they're like, I have your panels, I love them, I have
Yeah.
this product, I have that product, they are going to go a lot further, just because they're already so excited about it. We also have a lot of people that say like, I'm a gamer and I love your products. I can't afford them yet, but hopefully one day I'll be able to afford them. So we get a lot of people that are super excited about the product, and I think those people do much better here. Just for me personally, I was a fan of the product before I started working here, and I continue to be a fan. And every time we do new product releases, I am so excited. I am begging the product managers to give me the beta version, and I think that type of excitement about the company and about where we're going just really drives the work ethic for a lot of people here. So
Uh-huh.
I would say it's very important to be already excited about the company, even if you are applying to like a SaaS company that maybe you'll never use their HR platform that they want to sell to people. If you're just excited about working in general at the company because they seem like they have a good co-founder, they seem like they have this, that, it makes the world of a difference, I think, for recruiters, because they work there, so they probably like working there. So you should definitely kind of also speak to that, like why you would like working there, why you could see yourself working there, why you like the development aspect of it. There's different ways you can kind of show off that engagement. So I think that would probably be my biggest tip for people that are applying, is to really kind of show some engagement, show how excited you are about the company, even if it's not specifically the company itself, but what they work on.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. You got to have some interest, right? Like if you're just someone who's just spraying your resume out to hundreds of companies and just hoping for the best, and when you get the interview, you didn't even take the time to do some research on the founding team or the person you're interviewing with or the company and the mission, then your chances of getting the job are not great, right? And so when we coach and talk to candidates before they go into interview, baseline minimum, make sure you check out their website, do some research on the company, try the product, sign up for a free trial, read some reviews on what people say about the product or the service. Those are really important things because having a perspective, I think, is important, right? Like good companies are hiring great people because they want people to come in not to just write great code or to be a great product designer, but to bring a perspective and to move the company forward. Um, So one topic that I wanted to ask each of you about, it's making its rounds on LinkedIn, which is the open to work badge. And I'm interested in each of your takes on what do you think of it? Does it make a candidate look more attractive, less attractive? Does it make a difference to you? I know some people have some interesting thoughts about it, but maybe Joe, love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the open to work badge?
I think it's fine. I mean, LinkedIn is a tool that's used for, job seeking, job attracting, and things. Um, as recruiters, look, this might sound harsh, but like, a lot of our job is always dealing with the bias of the hiring team and
Yeah.
setting up the hiring team to really accept people who will fit the job that they've defined.
Hmm.
So as soon as they start applying bias to things as frivolous as an open to work badge, I start questioning the person that's making that decision, who's
Hmm.
adding to that theme of maybe we shouldn't use this, because it really is about what the person can do during the workday that you want to hire them for.
Yeah.
I think it's an over rotation to think that this is a bad thing or people should feel some kind of stigma for using it. It just really doesn't matter.
I would personally agree with that. Manuela, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think I've ever looked at that and been like, oh no, no, it's definitely completely fine from my perspective. If anything, it's easier for me to tell if you're hoping to work. So I wouldn't find that I would put any stigma towards looking at candidates just because they have that turned on.
Yeah, it's very weird. I think it's a social media phenomenon, and I've been just seeing it come up enough, so I wanted to ask about it. But I agree too. It's like it's there for a reason, like you're open to work. Maybe you just got laid off. Maybe you've moved on and you're looking for something, right? It's kind of a flag to let people know, hey, I'm excited to work. It's better than saying I'm not open to work or I don't want to work, right? Okay, so in closing, let's look forward to 2024. It's just around the corner. It sounds like both Nanoleaf and Harness kind of scaled back hiring a little bit. What do you think the outlook for hiring in 2024 looks like? Manuel, we'll start with you. Do you think it's going to be still conservative? Do you think you'll be aggressive in hiring a lot? What's kind of the outlook looking like?
We haven't done financial planning yet, so hopefully I'll know in January. But I am hoping that it does get a little bit better for hiring. I know that we're always looking for really good talent, and we're going to definitely get some interns in next year and see how it goes with all of our interns as normal. But for now, no clue what it's going to look like. I really hope that it ramps up again because I had fun in September hiring for like 6 roles at once.
Good. That's great. What about you, Joe? What's going on at Harness?
Yeah, it kind of comes back to financial planning that's coming down now. I would expect if my crystal ball is working well, I would expect maybe more incremental planning cycles, maybe on a quarterly basis as opposed to a year-long hiring plan. And then myself and my team are getting prepared for just more reactive sort of hiring as needs pop up. More strategic needs pop up that we need to address. Just getting my team used to maybe not having the solid plan in front of us and then fighting for capacity on the team and such in the back end.
All right. Well, Joe, Manuela, I definitely appreciate both of your time and your insights. Thank you so much for making this. This is the first time we did it, so congratulations. You've been a part of launching something brand new. Hopefully we continue to do it. We have more exciting topics. Until next time, this is Recruiting Roundtable. Again, Manuela from Nanoleaf, Joe from Harness, both great people, amazing companies. If you're interested, check their websites out. Hopefully they'll be hiring, and hopefully you'll have a chance to talk to them sometime in the future. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks again for jumping in.
Thanks,
Sean.
Okay.
Thanks, Manuela.
Yeah. Bye.